going to show off his game, on the Occulus Rift, which everyone has Lunar Flight. If you haven't got it, go check it out on Steam right now. What else to say, Sean? Beyond the fact that I'll let you talk more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about Unity-specific integration issues, my experience with using the Occulus Rift and getting it into my game. My game had already been shipped in February last year, got onto Steam around April, so it's integrating a game that was already released with the Occulus Rift. So I hope you'll find my talk as informative as Jason's.
You can talk a bit louder, or can you,
Sorry?
Can you talk a bit louder?
Am I not loud enough?
No.
Sorry, I have a hearing problem. I'll try and talk as loud as I can.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
You didn't get my microphone tip?
No, we...
All right. So I don't have as well organised. I don't even know how to operate this thing. How do we start it? F5. All right. So who am I? My name's Sean Edwards.
Sean, with a microphone for you.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I'm Sean Edwards. I've been a games and level designer in the Australian games industry for the past 13 years. Worked for quite a few different companies around the place. Started at Ratbag Games in Adelaide. They got bought out by Midway Studios, shut down. I came to Pandemic in Brisbane. I was actually interviewed by John at the time. And went on to Chrome. And then after Chrome, I did a short stint at KMM, which was George Miller, Kennedy Miller Mitchell's games to finish off Happy Feet 2. And then I went and worked for Kinetic, which is a global company that does a variety of things, a lot of military contracts and simulations and things like that. And I was working on a serious simulation for training for mining safety. After a while I was working at Kinetic, and actually shortly not long after Chrome shut down, I'd started working on my own indie project in my spare time using Unity. And it kind of just came about from me playing around with it one evening. I never really set out to kind of start a game, but I found myself spending a lot of time doing it. And after my contract with Kinetic finished, I was just about to release my game. It came out on Desura first, and not long after that I managed to get onto Steam. So, just click it. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about. As I mentioned, I had a game already which was suitable for the Rift. Does everybody know what the Oculus Rift is? Yep. It's very, very cool, and I believe it's the future. Well, there's obviously going to be many segments of the gaming industry, but this is a big market that's going to emerge, and one that I want to be a part of. I'll just talk about the things that I discovered while I was doing it, things you might find interesting, things you might, if you're going to get a kit yourself, you might get some tips out of this. So, just on Lunar Flight, there's some of the places you can buy it. Managed to get it distributed in retail in Germany through Head Up Games. That was really cool to get an actual physical product of my own game. Mac App Store, all the usual suspects. It's been out for about 16 months now, and it's a niche title. The game is, as it says up there, it's kind of like a modern take on Lunar Lander. If you know what Lunar Lander is, it's about bringing a lunar lander down onto the surface with a limited amount of fuel. It obviously extends it a bit further than that, adding missions and a variety of things. I'm not going to talk too much about specifically the game, but I want to focus on the Oculus stuff. So this wall of text, and these are the things that I want to talk about because I rushed to get this stuff together this afternoon after a late night. So I'll start at the top. So integrating SDK, building a new cockpit, 3ds Max preparation, camera setup, FOV estimate. So the Oculus Rift has a 110-degree field of view. It gives you almost full peripheral vision. And so when I started out, I had to build a new cockpit. I had a two-dimensional cockpit for my cockpit view, and I actually wanted to have a three-dimensional. I needed a three-dimensional cockpit. So to prepare for it, I built a cockpit which I assumed was to scale by getting a character model initially that was built to scale. Starting with the seat, building it around him, and then setting up a camera rig which had the same parameters as the Oculus Rift. And then I could check with a very low near clip value whether or not it was clipping anything inside the cockpit, but the scale and things were correct. This brought up something I wasn't aware of in my game. I'd always believed my game was actually built to scale. It's a simulation, and that's very important to build things to scale. And I discovered that everything was actually about 30% smaller using the default Oculus Rift eye separation values, which is based on actual accurate estimates of an average eye separation for a person. And so yeah, I found out it was about a 30% difference. It was smaller, and when I dropped the Oculus Rift player controller into the scene and started walking around in my scene and looking at everything looked really tiny. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. What am I going to do to solve this problem? And I was quite concerned about it because I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to rescale all my assets across all my levels, and that's just really horrible. And it turned out to be a very simple solution. All you have to do is change the separation of the cameras. And it actually, it made me aware of something that I really never thought about, was that everybody has different eye separation, right? Everybody has different geometry for their head and the position of their eyes. And this is a particular thing that you need to think about when developing for the Rift. And it made me think that, yes, everybody is very different. Everybody has different separation of their eyes. And everybody must perceive the world somewhat differently from everybody else in terms of the perception of the scale of objects. And this thing really makes it apparent. You can just tweak the numbering there and actually see it. And if you tweak it slowly, you can actually see things start to appear much larger or much smaller. And you can actually use this as an effect dynamically if you want to eat a mushroom and get really small or get really big. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about, which you don't normally have to think about with the Rift. And this is the things that people are discovering right now with the dev kit. This is a whole new field of research that people are going to have to spend time solving so many new issues, but also a really exciting time. And so on the matter of depth perception, when you wear the Rift, you're probably seeing videos of it, and you do not get any sense from it. Obviously, you know what it is. It's two separate images, and they produce a three-dimensional effect. But until you actually wear it and experience it yourself, you just really can't understand what is so amazing about it. And the only way I can describe it is that you do get a true perception of depth, a true perception of scale. You almost believe you are actually sitting in whatever environment it is. So with that said, you have to think about the perception of depth and where you place objects in your scene, particularly for UI elements. All your UI has to become three-dimensional. For example, in my game, I have the ability to select a navigation point. You fly a Lunar module around and you select a navigation point, and you can actually see a three-dimensional circle appear over the nav point. And when I first set it up, I put it so that it was like 3 meters out from you. It's rendered as an overlay in transparency, so it's rendered on top of everything, so you can see it like most hard elements are. But what I noticed was when I was trying to look at, say, it was a base off in the distance, but the object was actually closer. My eyes were trying to fight between looking at the object that's off in the distance and the object that's closer to me. So the solution to that is actually to place the object where the thing is you're looking at. You have to think about what the person is looking at, because you can actually change your focus inside the Rift. And it's not like 3D TV, and like I said, these are the sorts of perception issues you have to think about. Where you want somebody to look, they can actually look and focus on that particular thing in the scene in 3D, in stereoscopic 3D. So yeah, lots of things you have to think about, how far away they are. The other issue with the Rift is that with the current dev kit, it has, despite its awesomeness, it actually has some shortcomings, and that is resolution. And it's a 1280 by 800 frame buffer split down the middle, and then there's a distortion applied to the frame buffer for each eye to counteract the fisheye lens. It actually makes it fisheye in the frame buffer to counteract the effect of the lens in the eye. So yeah, when you're actually looking at things, it's not actually good to look into your periphery because it's blurry there. The shader actually condenses the pixels in the middle, which is good because you get more detail that way. But if you actually turn and look around the edges of the Rift inside the headset without actually moving your head to look at an object, it's blurry. And that'll get better with the consumer kit in high resolution. So calibration.
Sorry, can you just move the microphone back a little bit?
Sorry guys up the back. I know. Can we turn the volume up? So another issue is your drift. After you initially sit down to use the rift, after a period of time, the magnetic yaw starts to drift a little bit, the sensor in it, and you'll find that you'll continually start to turn your body to counteract the effects, so you're continually facing forwards. Now there is a software solution for it, and I'll show you this in a little while, which basically takes a reference point and then over time samples the difference between the reference point where the camera's looking, and then smoothly transitions it back through interpolation. So,
is that a hardware glitch?
Yeah, I mean it's a physical issue with the hardware, but yeah, once you use the calibration, it's fine. The sensor itself is amazing. It senses at or tracks at 1,000 hertz. It's really fast and really smooth. Anything you do with your head, it picks it up instantly. The only latency is obviously the time it takes to read the data and render the frame out to your eyes. So frame rate is obviously really critical, and as is V-syncing. You want to be hitting 60 frames per second to get the best effect. So yeah, the SDK is actually really easy to use. You can literally just drop the prefabs that come with the SDK into the scene, press play, put the headset on, and it just works. But if you want to do some more advanced things, which I'll talk about, which I've done with my game, there's a few things you have to be aware of. So in my cockpit, one thing that becomes an issue is the clipping planes. So everybody knows what a clipping plane is in 3D, but I know most of you will. Basically, what I had to do was, when you sit in the cockpit and you look down, you can actually, I've got a model there, and you can actually see a body, and you get this kind of sense that it is your own body. It really does feel like, if you put your limbs in the same positions, you feel like it is actually your body. But to be able to achieve that, to be able to look at things that are so close to you, you need a really low near clip plane. And that will produce Z buffer issues on objects off in the distance. So you'll get Z fighting things flickering off in the distance. So to solve this issue, particularly because I've got a flight simulation based game, things are way off in the distance, you have big draw distances, you can use multiple camera layers. So what I've done is the cockpit draws first. It has a very short near clip and only sees out to about 10 meters just beyond the cockpit. And then there's another set of cameras which have a much higher near clip to maintain Z buffer accuracies, and it just renders the terrain. So that's something to think about. But I had to actually hack it a little bit. This isn't something that isn't initially supported, but I've been posting quite a lot on the forums, in the Unity forums, on the Occulus Rift forums about a lot of these things. So if you want to find out how to do these things, a lot of the information is there. So only the first camera that's picked up is used for tracking, and everything, all the orientation information is slaved off that one, or is fed to all the other cameras. It's something to be aware of if you're going to be parenting objects onto the camera. So you want to put something that is actually parented to it, so wherever you look, it's in front of your face, like UI and stuff like that. Let's see where we. New clips, buffer issues, duplicate issues. This is a really interesting one, and I expect it's something they'll solve in the consumer kit. The eye separation, and as I mentioned before, everybody has different eye separation, and they have this other thing called IPD, it's interocular something or other. Basically, it's a value, it describes the distance between pupils. And the Rift is set up for 64 millimeters. It's fixed with the lenses. So there's multiple layers that go through before it reaches your eye. There's the panel, the distortion shader to counteract the fisheye lens, then the lens itself, and then your actual eye. And all these things need to line up in a perfect line to get the best effect for it. And currently, not everybody can use it. So the Rift only suits a small fraction of people, ideally, really. They do have some things you can offset, but until they allow you to actually adjust the horizontal position of the lenses themselves, that's going to be an issue. But I expect that they'll be something they'll have in the consumer kit. In fact, I expect them to have also, the kit comes with 3 different lenses for different long-sightedness, short-sightedness, and kind of average one. And you can also adjust the distance of the LCD panel from your eyes. So if you're wearing glasses, you can actually wear them. But the further you extend it out, the less peripheral vision you get. You start to look like you're looking down a tube. Okay, so anti-aliasing, obviously with low resolution. anti-aliasing is a big problem, especially for fonts and things like that. You want to read them. And I found I've pretty much been custom building everything as I've been building the cockpit out to support the resolution of the headset and the scaling issues and how far away objects need to be and focusing issues. Everything's kind of been optimized around the constraints of the hardware. And this is something the Occulus guys talk about. The best Rift games are going to be games that are purposely built for the hardware. And that's very true. One thing you can do is if you aren't fill rate bound, if your game's running really fast, you can actually render it a higher resolution than the native resolution, and the headset actually downscales that, so it's one way to cheat and get it like a 4 times improvement in your image quality. Okay, fixed update and interpolation issues. Everybody knows what fixed update is in Unity. Most of the programmers should know what that is. Being a simulation game, I wanted everything to be really accurate, really smooth. I didn't want any interpolation on my rigid bodies. But what I found was one of the first things that I wanted to do was use stretched particles. Most artists will probably know what this is when as velocity increases or as your speed increases, you can feed velocity into particles to make them appear as though they're speeding past your face. So you can do this very easily in Unity with the particle system. There's actually a couple of flags you can set on it. But if the particle system is attached to the rigid body and it's traveling through space, dropping particles and they're passing by and they're stretching, if you're using interpolation, it works beautifully. If you're not using interpolation and using fixed update, and you run at 60 frames per second, for every frame higher than the fixed update rate, those frames will appear to not have moved, so the particle will disappear because it'll have no motion. It'll be for that frame, nothing has changed over time, so you'll have these particles blinking in and out of space. And the other issue is colliders when using interpolation. So in my cockpit, I have lens flares and all those sorts of lovely things, and you want them to work really accurately. But what I found was as my velocity increases, the lens flares would start to show through the body. And also I use raycast for context-sensitive input actions. So if you're looking at monitors or buttons and things like that, you can look at them and press a button. But if you're using interpolation, you get faster, those rays start missing their targets, and it feels really flaky. So I had to fall back on fixed update. There was no real solution for that. And what my solution is to run my fixed update a couple frames higher than 60 frames per second, as long as I'm maintaining 60 frames. I know the rendered frame rate is never going to be higher than the fixed update, and I'll never have particles blinking in and out. And finally, UI considerations. Obviously, the things, when you put the headset on, you can't see anything, and you can't really use a mouse and keyboard because you can't see the keys. You can feel out for them if you've got a good reference point from in your head where things are. I find the best thing, obviously, is the game control. If you use the game controller a lot, your kind of thumbs have memory and you know where everything is on the controller. But yeah, it's a real issue. So how you interact with the world is going to be one of the big design issues for virtual reality. And there are a lot of really cool things coming out. Sixth Sense has and Razer has these motion control sensors. I can't think of the names. Does anybody know what they're called? Hydra. The Hydra, yes. And it's kind of like 2 Wii remotes you hold in your hands. There's been some really cool experiments with those already where they're rendering hands because they contract in 3D space. And you hold 2 controls and you can actually see 2 hands in the 3D where your hands are. You can like pick up balls and throw them and manipulate objects and do cool stuff like that. I want to get one as well, so and have your virtual hands in my game also to reach out and touch buttons and things in the cockpit. So I'm using NGUI now. All my UI was actually Unity GUI. It's really horrible to use, but I struggled through. And I'm using NGUI now to render into render target. And then I can just put that plane up in front of the player and interact with it. So, with that said, I'm going to call out a guinea pig.
Just click a button.
Anybody want to try it? Who wants to try it? Who really wants to try it? This guy.
I'd love to.
Can I get someone without glasses? No offense. But it's just I have to refit lenses and things like that. So, but when everyone's gone, and if you're still around, come see me later. You want to try it?
Sure.
Okay.
Bad time out. Everyone's going to be shot. I've had too many beers to be putting on a headset.
I've got this set up so it duplicates the display, so you should be able to see everything that you're seeing. So you need to make sure this is, I'm not sure how big your head is, it's pretty big, but you want it fairly firm.
Just to be safe. It doesn't
Shut it down so you can read the depth controller.
Desktop is not good.
Close your eyes when stuff like that happens because it can be quite off-putting. All right, so I'm going to put the controller in your hands, the Xbox controller. You know how to use one of those?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so this is a calibration stage which sets up the magnetic correction. So look up. It's good I'm not giving any instructions. Look left. Yeah, look right. It's not doing it. Wiggle your head around. Look down a little bit. I know why it didn't work.
Close eyes.
Close your eyes. When it says look left, bring your head down to the center and then look left.
All right.
Not down first.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
And then across. No. Look forward.
Yeah.
And now look to your left.
Yeah. Sorry, that was.
Left is low. It's broken. Yeah, we'll try this one more
Because he
time.
looked left, not down.
Left down, so.
Okay. This is why it's a dev kit. Okay, so 1A again. Look up. Bring your head back down to the center. Look to your left. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now look across to your right. Give me a dip for a minute. Is that right? It's an easy one. Actually, if you want to get the turn around.
Sure.
I don't want to mess up your hair.
Put your hand in front of your face.
That's weird.
So up, then back down to the center. Across to the left.
Double tap
Back
back.
to the center. Up. Down. To the left. To the right. So he's going to be really amazed, right? You guys go, hey. Right, so, yep, that's right, just pick that one. You can, yep, cross again. Now you can select the map there. Pick map 2. Yep, that's all right.
Take my money.
Okay, so so I put the Xbox controller there because I originally had no hands. They were kind of gummy. Look, I'm not an animator, so it was very difficult for me to get that kind of like that, just grabbing heaps of verts and dragging them in position. But it's there to give you a reference point. So yeah, just have a look around. You can see the little green arrows that pop up. They're indicating the context action that you can interact with. Just press the Y button. So look at rearm. That's it. If you look to your right, on the panel to your right, there's your flares and missiles, number of flares and missiles. Yep. So right trigger. Right trigger is your main thrust.
Yep.
that's cool. That's
Yep. Your left stick is translation, so it'll push you forwards, backwards, strafe left and right. Your right stick is your pitch and roll. And the bumper buttons are yaw. So if you want to just rotate,
I see.
it's going to be spinning out of control.
Ground somewhere.
So crude.
Going the wrong way, man. Distance.
Yeah, so if you look to your left, there's a map.
Oh,
See the
it's
map?
anywhere to fly.
Yeah. So if you press B, you can cycle through the nav points there. So pick one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll see the little circle down near your feet. That's the heading indicator. It indicates the direction you need to rotate towards.
This is really cool.
So yeah, Lunar flight is it's essentially about it's essentially about flying. Bring up the slide. It's essentially about flying in lunar gravity with no atmosphere. You can conduct different types of missions. You can go on survey runs where you go out and you have to hover at a location and collect data, or go out and find lost cargo, recover them, bring them back. Everything is physics-based, so if you're doing transport missions, you actually carry cargo, so that affects your inertia and mass and fuel expenditure and all those sorts of things. If you look up, that camera there is showing your actual velocity.
Oh, okay.
That's where you're actually heading right now. So you're right above Bravo, based on the looks of it. You can actually change that. You just press Y, and anything you look at, you change it. So that's a top-down view.
Okay.
You can also get map, and you can also get a camera that looks at the base that you have selected. Straight down.
It's too disorienting to look at.
It is, once you start spinning. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run a replay. So you won't be controlling it.
Yeah.
Actually,
That'd mess with your eyes.
I can't show you that because I modified all the UI last night and it's all broken. Yeah. Sorry, can't show you that. You'll just have to fly it or crash. See if you can crash. You can see there's a scan line that's going up.
Get the light
Come on.
Get the light
I'll land it for you.
Skipped.
Someone gets a bucket.
Close your eyes.
Cover. Let's go.
I'm going to take it for a little while.
You put it on.
Man, you guys broke everything on me. I'm just going to change the map. This one. No, I added this about a month after Curiosity landed on Mars. It seemed like a kind of marketing opportunity to catch on to all the Mars fever. So Mars has different gravity, it has atmosphere, it also has dynamic dust storms that blow in and affect all the physics and all that sort of stuff.
Did that help the sails show when you did that?
No, not really. Maybe a little bit, but not a lot. I mean, when I first released the game, a lot of this, obviously a lot of this stuff wasn't in there. There was no multiplayer. It wasn't the Mars map. And every little bit that I've continually added to it's kind of like, I don't know, continually enhancing the scope and making the game better. And, people come back to it every time I add updates to it, and then they go, "Oh, it's cool, it's got new stuff in it," and then they remember to tell their friends, and hey, so I don't know, it makes an income for me.
How many have you sold?
It's done 55,000 units
At $10 a piece.
at $10 a piece. heavily discounted. So I haven't made $500,000. I actually released the stats for it. It's done just over $200,000 in 16 months, and then I get about 50% of that. So it's like having an income. That's over a 16-month period. So.
Yeah, I'm sold.
But you know what? I get to sit at home and do this full time, so that's cool. I don't need a lot of money as long as I can keep doing what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Is there an estimate on how much the Oculus will cost?
They said that they want to try and keep it around $300, which is what the devs kit cost. So I don't see why. I mean, most of the components in it are fairly cheap. The most expensive part of it is the display. Really, it's just plastic and the little sensor that's in it. That's not very expensive at all.
Could you use the leap motion controller as a...
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of people trying all sorts of things like that. Leap motion is one of the things. If you go on the forums, you can see there's so many cool little demos and experiments people are doing. There's a little demo. Some guys have made of chopping someone's head off. They chop your head off and. It'll crash. All right. Anybody else want to try it?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Could you use this theoretically in conjunction with the Kinect or something?
That's cool. Anything that is an input device. One of the things it doesn't have at the moment is positional tracking, which they say they're going to have in the consumer kit as well. One of the issues you get with it is you do get some nausea from it, and a lot of that is induced by your brain's disconnect between what should actually be happening. If you're standing still and just rotating your head, that's normal because your brain is expecting that's all that's going to happen. If you lean forward, that's when you feel sick because you don't see yourself lean forward, and it's that convincing to your mind when you're using it, your brain actually freaks out.
Just close your eyes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Hold on, Rob. Do you want to fly it? So yeah, I mean anything that you could use as an input device. People are using things like infrared sensors and web cameras to add motion tracking to it. Because all you need is to provide that data to move the object around in that space. It's fairly trivial, really. It's not that complicated. They just don't have one built into it. People are actually getting the 6th Sense Hydra and attaching one of the controllers to their head or their body and using that to pick up the translation information.
You seriously need to be able to do something, like to touch.
You feel like you want to, don't you? You just want to touch the button. Actually, what I'll do, Rob, if you could just not look around too much, I'll try and do a mission. So it does have weapons, but the weapons are added for multiplayer. So there's death matches, a mission challenge mode, has a whole weapons targeting system. It's actually a fairly dedicated community. There's some guys that sink enormous amounts of time in it, probably more than I have.
When you wear it, Sean, do you see the pixel grid or?
Yeah. So what Rob's talking about is I can't remember what they call it, the screen door effect. Is that it's so close to your eye you can actually see the individual pixels in the LCD panel. That's something that they say in the HD version is not as apparent. You can see some of the issues, the aliasing issues down the side of the columns there. You can see the high contrast edges showing up on the side. So what I was going to do, Rob, can you just look to the left at that thing there, the panel, the TV screen on your left?
Yes,
Yeah, look straight at it from me. So I can select missions here using the D-pad. So I'm going to pick Lost Cargo. It's northeast of Bravo. I'll select that one. Now, can you look forward? Actually, look back. I need to refuel. Look at the refuel button. Up. Down. Look straight at it, Rob. There we go. Cool. All right, look back. So it was what was it? What was the mission description?
You don't want to turn your head too quick.
Rob, look at that. Look at that screen again for me. That one there. Yeah. So I can change this by cycling it. So it's northeast of Bravo. So if I go to the map, there's Bravo. So it's up and across to the right a little bit. So look forward.
Yep.
Going to go over that way. Find this lost cargo. Again, you know, this. I mean, if you're not really into simulations, this probably looks fairly mundane, but using it with the Rift is a whole different ballgame. It's like flying a spacecraft.
Man, this would be an awesome racing game, as in racing cars.
You can imagine all the cool applications you could use it for, different types of games. And I want to see. Has anybody seen the Unity prototype that guy made of the wingsuit? I can't think of the name of it, but basically he starts high up above a mountain, and he's got really cool dynamic physics for using a wingsuit. I reckon that would be awesome.
Smashing it.
Yeah, yes, it turns into a ragdoll.
You even get a bit of there.
So it's northeast. Just look up at that panel for me at the top there, Rob. Okay, it should be somewhere around here.
On the back.
Just keep looking forward.
There's a lot more depth there in
There.
3D movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's true stereoscopic 3D.
So what's the release date for
They haven't actually announced the date, but it's next year sometime. Yeah, so I mean, unless you're a Kickstarter backer, which I was, or you got one of the pre-order units, they sold 40,000 of them all up. They've only shipped about 10.
Oh.
Yeah. They're such a small company. They just got 16 million in capital investment to further boost the company. Yeah, I reckon there's a lot of things that haven't been announced yet by some of the big publishers that are developing some things for it. The most highest rated thing from E3, the most popular thing at E3 this year was EVA, which is a little demo that the company that makes EVE Online developed, which is it's a space-based combat shooter, little